Well, here we are at ESAM, Empire State Aerosciences Museum on Route 50 north of Schenectady. An amazing place. An amazing place. And I've bumped into a fellow right here in the parking lot waiting for a group of kids, I think. Sir, who are you and what do you do here?
I'm Rich Fisher. I give tours and I lead educational programs here at the Empire State Aerosciences Museum.
Great. How often do you have tours? And
every week or a couple of weeks we have tours. We have open cockpit Saturdays during the months of July and I believe August. And it's a great place for kids to come and learn about the history of aviation and do some hands-on things dealing with aviation. It's a lot of fun.
Wow. Can they actually ever get inside some of these fabulous airplanes you have?
Well, those are a collection of aircraft from the 50s and 60s and even the 70s and 80s. Mostly it's 50s and 60s, but there are many cockpits available there. For example, if you can see that the helicopter there, the black helicopter, just on the other side of that is a Navy A6 Intruder, and oftentimes that hatch will come up and the kids can sit inside of there and see what it feels like to be a Navy pilot for a few minutes.
Wow. How many aircraft are there here? Do you have any idea?
Approximately 20. Some of them are still in the process of being restored. Some of them have been fully restored. For example, the F-105 Thunder Chief we have here has been completely restored, and it is just a fantastic example of 60s technology, 50s and 60s aircraft technology.
Well, just so you know, I'm looking for a early World War II P-40.
P-40 Warhawk Curtiss.
You got it to send to China.
Yeah, well,
they want one.
The Flying Tigers flew the Curtiss P-40 Warhawk.
You got it. You got it.
And also the Red Tails, the Tuskegee Airmen started in Curtiss P-40s.
Wow.
So yes, there's a strong connection between the Burma, China, India theater in the United States during World War II.
Do you know almost all Chinese know about the Flying Tigers?
Yes.
It's really celebrated there.
They had,
in recent history.
As bad as things were for the Japanese and Americans, as bad as things were in terms of our experience in the war, the Chinese experience was much worse.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Much worse.
And it's my understanding that once the Flying Tigers shot down Japanese bombers over the city of Kunming, China, Kunming was never bombed again. I mean, that is a memory.
Yeah, the Flying Tigers had a large role in that, yes.
Yeah.
And the Curtiss P-40 Warhawk in general.
You know, there's some museums in China just dedicated to the Flying Tigers. Yep, currently.
We had a Chinese representative not long ago come here, and they very much honor what the Americans did during the war at that time.
Yeah, I think that's the man I brought here, Jin Fei Bao.
That sounds correct.
And
yes.
He's the one looking for the P-40. Okay. Well, we'll go inside now, and good luck with today's tour.
Thank you.
Here we are, just the entryway, and boy, here's George Yeager going to take me on my tour, and receptionist. Here we go, right inside the door. Hello, George.
Good morning.
What's your role with the museum, George Yeager?
Well, I'm a trustee, number one. I'm chairman of the exhibits committee, and all around do anything else.
Okay. All right, and right inside the door, what do we have here?
This is a Newport 17, not an exact replica. It was given to us by a gentleman by the name of Charles Burkhan. He started to build a home-built that resembled a Newport 17, and due to ill health he had to stop and went into assisted living, but we were given the start of it by his son, and we did a lot more than what he had intended. And we made this the focus of this exhibit.
When was this aircraft flown?
It was never flown.
No, I mean the general aircraft.
It's a World War I fighter developed by the French and was very successful earlier in the war.
Wow.
When the war started, a an aircraft like this wasn't even in existence.
Okay.
The primary use for an aircraft was intelligence. They supplanted balloons. The Army generals would employ the use of balloons where observers would go up and, report down. And the aircraft were then used for this same purpose, not as a fighter, because they didn't even consider fighting with it.
Or think of it that way. But boy, they mounted a gun on this and suddenly they had a weapon.
Well, now you must notice that this gun is mounted over the wing. When they first tried to use machine guns, mostly what they succeeded in doing was shooting off their own prop. Now this is because there was no synchronization between the gun and the prop. The Germans were the first to do that, and then the Allies followed suit.
Wow.
But that's why that gun is up above.
Like, why does the man climb
Amazing.
Each of these wall panels is about 3 feet wide, so you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 wall panels. That's 9 threes are 27 feet. Plus you got 2 half sections, which are probably about 1.5 feet wide. That's another 3 feet. So it's probably 30 feet.
How many days have you been working on
Oh, I've been
this?
working on this since April, and then we're coming into August now. It took me the best part of a month just to get the image drawn in, sketched in,
Okay.
and then it's a question of painting. And I haven't done any painting since I was a kid in college, so this is all rediscovering how to do it again. Anyway, we did some research here. And the crashed Newport, that was not hard to figure out and to put in there. And then I came up with a series of hangers in the background. These are called, if you take a look here, these are what they call Bessonneau hangers. They were designed by a French engineer to be temporary portable hangers that you could take down and put up really quick. And because most French aerodromes were shared by more than one squadron, you had to have a variety of different types of hangers. So we have a wooden shed type hanger with some Sopwith 1.5 strutter bombers in here for a squadron. A couple of pilots, some mechanics working on a series of Newports. Across here, a work truck. And then over here, what we've got is another Newport. Newport belonging to a French ace by the name of Charles Nungesser. And Nungesser was one of the top scoring French pilots of the war, and he actually was a rival of Charles Lindbergh in trying to fly the Atlantic in the 1920s. He and his navigator disappeared over the Atlantic, probably somewhere off the coast of Maine. Anyway, Nungesser had a kind of macabre personal emblem, and he flew with the Escadrille Lafayette for a brief period of time while he was recovering from one of his many wounds. And he had this macabre personal emblem with a skull and crossbones and a candles around a coffin. And he also had a French Moors scout car, which he had personally captured from a German patrol early in the war. So I put that in there just for a little extra detail. And that's it. You know, it's.
So this hanger is finished with its color,
Yeah, pretty much.
but all the white is yet to be.
Yeah, we got to
colored?
fill this in, right? The
Wow.
Newports are going to be pretty much silver, like this one here behind you. And they have the red, white, and blue cockhards on the wings. They have the wing-mounted Lewis gun on them, like the one I built for this plane over here.
Oh, you built that.
Yeah, that was my first project when I came here to the museum. George asked me if I could build a Lewis gun. I said, sure. He gave me the plans.
I went through this guy's stuff here,
Uh-huh.
and that was
That's a Vickers gun, yeah.
yeah. So maybe
So this photograph shows the state of the construction when this airplane was given and arrived at the ESAM Museum, and now it's up to this stage of completion. How many more days do you figure it'll be finishing the painting? A year?
No, I want to try and finish it up by the fall. I would love to have it done by Labor Day.
Yeah.
You know, it's a question of, well, it takes a little longer than I thought because the opacity of the paint is such that you end up having to do 2 coats on a lot of things, which, you know, doubles your time for everything you do. But, you know, we're making good progress.
Good. Wow. How many hours a day do you put in?
Let's see.
Couple?
It's a couple. I usually get here about 10 o'clock in the morning and work until about 2 or 3 in the afternoon.
That's fabulous.
I think I may have to cut back a little bit on that because my back is starting to play tricks on me.
What a fabulous museum this is.
That's a nice place.
Yeah.
The fellas here do a heck of a job.
Well, I had coffee.
Really love their work.
I had coffee yesterday with some of the volunteers, like 25 guys and a couple gals in there. I mean,
you're back in the restoration shop, were you?
a lot of effort goes into this beautiful museum. So here we begin with the Amelia Earhart Round the World route. Come on, you can come across. Go ahead, and we'll walk on down a ways. Now, what is that little aircraft up there in the ceiling? Hardly looks like it could fly.
It's a French design called the Pischoff. It was built by high school kids in Auburn, New York. The instructor actually flew it. So it's a working airplane.
Wow. What year are we talking with this aircraft?
I think it was back in the 50s. I'm not certain about that. But it's kind of an oddity.
Amazing. It's surprising that everyone doesn't have one in their garage. So it's a replica of a 1922 French flying motorcycle built in '75. Wow, what an aircraft. All right. Look at that. Look at that airplane. And here is the exhibition on Antarctica.
Kiernan, come check this out. It's a diorama.
Hey, what do we have here, George?
This is called a link trainer. This was invented and built at the time the airmail pilots were flying. They had numerous crashes because they couldn't fly at night or in bad weather. The instrumentation was limited, so Mr. Link, whose father owned an organ factory, designed this thing, and it's all designed around vacuum bellows and controls that you would find in an organ.
Oh my goodness.
During World War II, thousands of pilots, almost every one, spent some time in a link trainer. Now this is a little more sophisticated than the original design because it had
So you get closed up, you can't tell whether you're in a...
But it has all the instrumentation of a real aircraft. The instruments respond to the controls as they would in a real aircraft. And pilots could train without using fuel and worry about crashing.
Yeah.
Yes, you can press the button.
With these systems, there was also a desk and an instructor that controlled what the belt must be on.
Okay.
Anyway, he could record every movement that the pilot made, and they would schedule a flight.
Hold on, let me see.
Why would anybody come down here?
Is this a button?
No, that's not a button.
What is it?
That's a
Early
button.
explorers were simply
The other one's just.
Now, is that plane up there? What is that?
That is a copy of a Curtiss 1910 Model 10,
Yes, you can go and
but
take it. No, not
the
for 10
plans
seconds.
were
You can
published
print
in either Popular Science or Popular Mechanics. One. It
Wow.
was built by a young lad in Fort Edward. He flew it, and he even took another kid up as a passenger. He sat on the wing and hung on. That model plane was also the one that Curtiss flew from Albany to New York City to win a Pulitzer Prize. The first flight of that length attempted.
Just about 100 and few years ago,
Yeah.
airplanes looked like that. Boy,
And
amazing.
At the start of World War I, that's what aircraft looked like.
Wow.
And that's why I say that Newport is a big advance.
Is that for big?
Aircraft.
A balloon propeller, the forerunner of the propeller for an aircraft. Wow. Oh, and then we have all the planes in the hangar.
It's real, but it's not
What
What
are the missiles for?
are the missiles for? Those are decorations.
We had a visitor here yesterday who told me he was the foreman in the shop when they built that
Here, then check this one out.
glider, that sailplane in RPI.
Wow.
It is.
It's like to play with. It's
Oh, flight control and
well,
go ahead.
I can go around.
Take off. Now landing, yeah.
Before electronics, they depended on your eyes and your ears to identify aircraft.
Yeah.
And there were clubs, even high school kids, and they would join these and spend time and report all this activity. Most of them in the early days.
An exhibition of women involved in early aviation. The women who made aviation history. Very nice.
Sperry adapted his father's design for ship gear to keep ships on an even keel.
Uh-huh.
He adopted them for aircraft, and he made some great things. He got a contract to build this plane, and the government didn't want to pay him for quite a while, and actually flew down to Washington, landed there, and demanded payment. That's what that diorama represents.
And here we have a bit of
Now this,
history of ballooning.
right, this is the early, and New York State was quite involved. John the Mountain, he was bound and determined he was going to fly across the Atlantic. Now, this was at a time when a balloon trip, if it went 30 miles, was a terrific distance. And he was going to fly across the Atlantic. So he had a boat built, a special boat, that hung below the basket. The balloon itself was built in Lansingburg, where he was from, and they had 100 women sewing the balloon. And they finished the balloon, and he wanted to make a test flight. Back in those days, they used city gas quite often, and city gas was expensive in a balloon that big. So he got the city of St. Louis to agree to supply the city gas to fill the balloon, and he was going to fly to the East Coast, because that's the way the prevailing winds were. Well, they had a beautiful flight until they got up to Henderson Harbor up on the St. Lawrence, and ran into a terrific storm. Gale winds that were as high as 80 miles an hour something. Well, they had to avoid getting killed, they had to try to land. And they tore down, they bounced the boat off the lake to begin with, and he crawled down and dumped everything overboard to lighten it, and they bounced back up in the air. They hit land. There was a forest there, and they were tearing through this forest with a grappling hook even larger than that, and it was just going right through the trees until they hit a big oak at the end of the forest, and it caught and held, and they all survived anyway. The balloon was down. Then he decided that he would repair the balloon and finish the flight to the coast. Well, the editor of the Watertown newspaper said, "Oh, that's just an overnighter, I'll go with you." Well, they took off in the evening, and then when dawn hit, these were all fog down below. They didn't know where they were. They had no real navigational aids at that time. And they came down through the fog and hit the tops of the trees, and he said, "I know these trees do not grow in New York State. We have to be in Canada." So they climbed down, and they were gone for a couple of weeks until people that work in the forest found them. Everybody thought they were dead, of course, because nobody heard from them. And it was quite an adventure anyway. He also flew his balloon in the Civil War. That you might say it's the first aircraft carrier. He had his balloon tethered to a barge, which they would drag down the river, and he would take off. Now, he flew freely. He didn't. There were several balloonists in Civil War, but most of them were tethered. He would fly and navigate over the Confederate lines and then come back.
He survived that. Amazing.
Well, then there was a big battle about who was going to be the balloonist for the Civil War armies, and it got political, and he left in a huff anyway.
Probably lucky for him.
This represents the first balloon flight in 1783, which the Montgolfier brothers, who owned a paper factory, built this thing. Now, prior to this, nobody had built a manned balloon. People used to take a paper bag, light a fire under it, and for some reason they didn't know it rose in the air. So he said, well, maybe it's dirty smoke works better. So they threw all kinds of garbage in this fire, in this furnace. And the king would not let people go up in the first flight. So they had goats and chickens. and it was successful. It flew. Then it was flown manned, and
The train you can't control. You can control the airplanes.
it was successful anyway. Now at this time, people didn't really know anything about balloons or anything else, and this thing that would appear in the sky and come down, they thought it was the devil or somebody else or all sorts of things, and they'd attack it with pitchforks. It's a great story.
Yeah, kids love things that move and make noise.
Yeah, right.
Hey. Yeah, look at he's landing that. He's landing. Yeah, he did it just right. George, now what's this 1902 glider?
This is a Chinook glider designed by Octave Chinook. In the early days, what they would do, they would carry this up on top of a hill, take a running start, and glide down the hill in these. This particular glider was found in Amsterdam, and we know there was a soaring club in the area, and Charles Steinmetz belonged to it. We can't definitely prove that he belonged to this particular group, but there weren't many. So,
But that's a real, the original?
yes, that's
Oh my goodness.
So they would drag these up to the top of a hill and run down and jump and glide down.
And people are still doing it.
Yeah, only a little more sophisticated.
Okay.
Push the button. It should light up a button. Now this one's in probably in Long Island. So let's see what happens. Come on now. Oh, there's one. There's one here. So if you press this one, Mineola, New York, goes here, and Glendale too. Over here.
How you doing?
Let's see. Where's Schenectady? Let's go to Schenectady, where you are. And it's not lighting up. We like vampires. We like vampires.
I'm going to get Jim.
Okay.
Oh, it's up there.
You look for me. You got two options for it.
Yep.
You must be up there.
Brooklyn. It's up in the left. Yep. That's New York City, baby. They used to make a lot of airplanes up in New York City.
ESAM.
There, for example, if you can see that the helicopter there, the black helicopter, just on the other side of that is a Navy A6 intruder, and oftentimes that hatch will come up and the kids can sit inside of there and see what it feels like to be a Navy pilot for a few minutes.
Wow. How many aircraft are there here? Do you have any idea?
Approximately 20. Some of them are still in the process of being restored. Some of them have been fully restored. For example, the F-105 Thunder Chief we have here has been completely restored, and it is just a fantastic example of 60s technology, 50s and 60s aircraft technology.
Well, just so you know, I'm looking for a early World War II P-40.
P-40 Warhawk, Curtis.
You got it, to send to China.
Oh, yeah, well,
they want one.
The Flying Tigers flew the
You
Curtis
got
P-40
it.
Warhawk.
You got it. Well, here we are at ESAM, Empire State Aerosciences Museum on Route 50 north of Schenectady. An amazing place. An amazing place. And I've bumped into a fellow right here in the parking lot waiting for a group of kids, I think. Sir, who are you and what do you do here?
I'm Rich Fisher. I give tours and I lead educational programs here at the Empire State Aerosciences Museum.
Great. How often do you have tours? And
every week or a couple of weeks we have tours. We have open cockpit Saturdays during the months of July and I believe August. And it's a great place for kids to come and learn about the history of aviation and do some hands-on things dealing with aviation. It's a lot of fun.
Wow. Can they actually ever get inside some of these fabulous airplanes you have?
Well, those are a collection of aircraft from the 50s and 60s and even the 70s and 80s. Mostly it's 50s and 60s, but there are many cockpits available.
You got it.
And also the Red Tails, the Tuskegee Airmen started in Curtis P-40s.
Wow.
So yes, there's a strong connection between the Burma, China, India theater and the United States during World War II.
Do you know almost all Chinese know about the Flying Tigers?
Yes.
It's really celebrated there.
They had,
in recent history.
As bad as things were for the Japanese and Americans, as bad as things were in terms of our experience in the war, the Chinese experience was much worse.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Much worse.
And it's my understanding that once the Flying Tigers shot down Japanese bombers over the city of Kunming, China, Kunming was never bombed again. I mean, that is a memory.
Yeah, yes, the Flying Tigers had a large role in that, yes.
Yeah.
And the Curtis P-40 Warhawk in general.
You know, there's some museums in China just dedicated to the Flying Tigers. Yep, currently.
We had a Chinese representative not long ago come here, and they very much honor what the Americans did during the war at that time.
Yeah, I think that's the man I brought here, Jin Fei Bao.
That sounds correct.
And
yes.
He's the one looking for the P-40. Okay, well, we'll go inside now, and good luck with today's tour.
Thank you.
Here we are, just the entryway, and boy, here's George Yeager going to take me on my tour, and the receptionist. Here we go, right inside the door. Hello, George.
Good morning.
What's your role with the museum, George Yeager?
Well, I'm a trustee, number one. I'm chairman of the exhibits committee, and all around do anything else.
Okay.